Hello and welcome back to 123stitch.com. Are you sometimes frustrated because your stitches are not as neat and even as you would like them to be? Well, there's a couple of reasons why that happens, but I'm also going to share with you 4 tips on neater stitches. Before we get started though, please go down below and click on that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. And if I mention any products today, they will be listed as a link down below as well. Now let's go ahead and take a look at why our threads are sometimes so uncooperative. Okay, when stitching with 2 or more threads, we want the 2 threads to lay side by side like that. When they do that, then they lay flat, they look even, they look nice and pretty. But what happens over time when we're stitching is we take our needle down, we turn it around, we bring it back up, and what happens is after a little while, it starts to bunch up like that. When it does that, that's when the stitches don't lay as flat, and that's when the knots come in. So we want to avoid that at all costs. I think what most stitchers learn fairly quickly is you just let that needle dangle and let it unwind, and that will straighten it out again. You can also run your needle over the thread loosely a couple of times, and that straightens it, gets out any kinks, straightens it out. However, you don't want to do that too much. It'll wear on the thread and it'll also start to damage the eye of your needle. But you can do that somewhat and it'll straighten out your threads for the most part, and you can just keep on stitching and have those nice pretty stitches. But sometimes the thread you're using doesn't want to cooperate as much, or we just want them to look a little bit more perfect. So that's where some other techniques will come in. The first one I want to show you is called railroading. And railroading is where you bring your needle up, we take the needle through the 2 threads and then bring it back down again. So what we're doing is we're forcing those threads apart and forcing them to lay side by side. That's called railroading. I guess it's called railroading because like railroad tracks, they have to run nice and parallel. So you can do that on one side of your X, or you can do it on both sides. Some people just do it on the top half, but I think if you're going to do it, you might as well do it on both sides. It does take more time, but it does definitely force those threads to lay side by side and flat. So you can see, especially if you're doing hands-free on a frame like I am here, it's not too bad. You just aim for, now it's a little harder. We aim for where that opening is and bring our needle back down. So that gives us nice even stitches. They look a lot better, but it does take longer. So if that's something you want to do, it doesn't cost anything extra. It just makes for nicer stitches. I generally don't railroad unless I have a thread that is just being really uncooperative. Another time I like to do it is when I'm doing, for instance, a darker thread, a white on maybe a black or a dark blue background, like for snowflakes. The white does not seem to want to make pretty stitches for me ever, especially on a dark background. So that's when I railroad. So you don't need to do it all the time when you're stitching on your whole project, just when you want to. So that's called railroading, and that is my first tip. Now let me show you something else you can do. Okay, my next tip is to use a trolley needle. This one is by Yarnworks. It's called a trolley needle. It's basically a laying tool, which you may have heard of before. A laying tool is this long portion here. It's usually longer, and you hold it with your hand while you're using it. I like the trolley needle because it fits right on your finger. You don't have to hold on to another tool and possibly drop it. It just fits on with this little metal clip that you can tighten if it's too loose. You can put it wherever on your finger you want it. And let me show you how it works. You lay it right on the fabric and put you're going to be putting the thread over the trolley needle. You're going to pull it through, and as it gets to the end there, we're just going to wiggle a little bit, and that's going to force our threads to lay flat. This works really well for making them lay flat. It takes a little bit longer again, but if you want those really nice stitches, this is how it's done. Look how pretty those are turning out. Once you get the hang of it, I think it goes a little faster. but it certainly works really, really well. And like I said, there's all kinds of fancy laying tools you can get, but I like this one just for the ease of hanging onto it. The last thing I need is something else to hold on to. And again, this works best if you have a stand that you're working from, so you have a hand free. There you go. That is my second tip, to use the trolley needle. Okay, my next tip is to try using a double pointed needle or twin pointed needle. These have the eye in the middle and a point on both ends. So you thread it in the middle, and then working from a stand, you keep one hand on both sides of the frame or the stand, and you bring your needle up, and then you bring it back down again. You're not turning the needle at all. Remember I said when you turn the needle, that's when it gets twisted and it doesn't want to lay together as nicely. So when you are using a twin pointed needle, you don't have to do that. Now this takes just a little bit of time to get the hang of it because it's so different than what we're used to doing, but it keeps your stitches neater, and once you get the hang of it, you can actually stitch a lot faster because you're not spending that time turning your needle around. So that is tip number 3. Okay, tip number 4 is to use some sort of thread conditioner. I have Thread Magic here and also some Beeswax by Dritz. Let me show you how this works. Open that up. We're gonna run our thread right across here, all the way across. And what that does is that coats the thread so that it's nice and neat, it lays flat, doesn't harm the thread, but it just makes stitching so much nicer. The threads are going to stay together better. This works especially well if you're using a metallic floss. The metallics are notoriously hard to work with, so if you coat them with a thread conditioner, they're going to be a lot easier to work with, and they're going to keep those stitches looking nice and neat. So that is my 4th tip. So those were my 4 tips for neater stitches. Do you have any tips and tricks you'd like to share with us? Let us know in the comments section below. We love to hear from you. I read and answer all of your comments. While you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. If you have any ideas for future videos, I'd love to hear about those as well. Thanks for visiting with us again today, and we will see you again soon.